on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Sunbelt Syndicate. We are working on a new intro video, so that was kind of our holdover music, if you will. But that's the one that we usually use for football anyway, as we kind of share everything around. So hopefully everyone's getting settled in, tuning in, and hopefully checking this out on the website. Isn't that right, TJ?
Yeah, absolutely. We put out a post, just maybe a half hour ago, encouraging everybody, if you have the ability to, check out the website, www.sunbeltsyndicate.com. We do have it embedded. I did want to just address, before we got into the East Division wrap-up from Sunbelt Media Days today, the website looks a little bit funky right now. I'm sure that people have noticed because we did just get approved for ads. And the reason that is important, I just want to be open and transparent with everybody. I don't want for us to have to charge anything for you to get our content. That's something that Dom and I have spoken about, something that I'm pretty passionate in because I am passionate about the Sunbelt. And I know how much it costs to be a Sunbelt fan. You can't watch the games on anything but ESPN Plus. That's another $130, $140 a year for you to get that service. And then if they elevate a game to a big boy ESPN or to a national network, you have to either have like YouTube TV, Apple TV, or a cable provider. So it's already a pretty big financial investment for people to enjoy their Sunbelt Conference athletics. I have been told by so many people when starting this website, maybe you should consider a paywall. And I don't want to, because I think it's important that you guys get to experience that content for free. The only thing that we will ask in return is check out the website, share the articles. It helps us out tremendously. And through this new ad revenue, hopefully we're going to be able to give our writers some stipends in order for them to, get a little something for the work that they do. They do a really good job. Not recently, because we've been rolling out some preseason content, which we mentioned at the beginning of last episode, but we want to be able to send those writers to the big events so that we can get you guys some exclusive interviews and we can get you guys more content, because the Sunbelt lacks content. They lack media coverage, and we want to provide that. So that's the only thing that we'll ever ask. And that's the reason that post went out today. If you guys can check out our stream on sunbeltsyndicate.com from here on out, costs you nothing. Repost our stuff. It's one click on social media. We won't ask you for a dime, but it helps us out tremendously. So I did just want to say that, and it's the last time that we will ever ask you for money like that. We just want to be able to give you guys the best possible content. And if you could help us, scratch our back, we'll scratch yours.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have it behind a paywall and make sure that we're getting our guys taken care of. But like you said, TJ, all we do is get asked for money, like donate to the collective, donate for certain seats at your venue for goods, better seats for your family. It's a lot of money on the board that everyone's asking for.
It's a lot.
Yeah, we are trying to do our best. So yeah, put up with a few ads, but honestly, it's Google AdSense. So, it's going to put stuff in front of you that you've been looking at anyway. Secret, hint, hint. So it's not something that we are pushing product wise. It's going to be kind of what you've already been looking into. So hopefully not too much of an inquisition there, and we can kind of continue doing what we all want, which is following along with our favorite teams. And speaking of which, we'll get into the East Division tonight. We did the West last night. Be sure to check that one out. We actually went about an hour and a half. TJ, you and I both talked to do we have enough to go long enough? And once we got rolling, man, it was pretty easy to keep going. We had some good interaction, specifically from Ben James, who was kind of lighting up the comment section all night as he typically does. But we appreciate that because he's got a lot to say, especially on that A-State front. We'll see if we get some interaction on the East side today. As we know, the East side's been the one that's kind of carried a lot of the trash talk and the run of play throughout the regular season. But look at that West side, man. That West side has been well represented in championship games and championship winner along the way. So let's not forget about them. And we did pay them respects yesterday. So for that reason, we will skip talking about the coaches poll in the preseason for the West Side because we've already done that. But we did not talk about the East Side, so we'll start there. And I'll start with the one that's on my shirt. TJ, are you surprised to see App State up at 3 after how they finished last year and a lot of question marks coming into this year with our first-year head coach?
Well, you kind of hit it on the head right there. There's a lot of question marks about App State. They lose 6 starters on the offensive side of they lose 9 starters on the offensive side of the ball. They do bring back a really good core on defense, and that is something to keep an eye on. I think that they've got a new quarterback in AJ Swan, who was a transfer at Vandy last year. Rashad Dubinion, senior running back coming in from Arkansas. Jaden Barnes, a wide receiver transfer coming in from Austin P up in Tennessee. I think that they've got some really good guys coming in. 3 seems a little optimistic, in my opinion, but it is App State, and App State is known to put out a physical and mature team on the football field year in and year out. So I don't know if it necessarily surprises me, but there's a lot. They're going to have a target on their back now in the East with how high they are ranked.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I was surprised, honestly, especially because, you've got a first-year head coach. There's probably a lot of people who are not going to pay you any respect in that regard, right? You didn't have the greatest season last year. You lost a lot of the core guys that kind of got you there the year before, right? Joey Aguilar's now on his 3rd team, weirdly enough, after coming up to App State, then going to UCLA, now ending up at Tennessee. With that saga, I'm sure App State fans are certainly well aware. I'm sure even fans outside of App State are aware of that situation. So, yeah, a question mark at head coach. At quarterback, you do have Kanye Roberts, a returner at the running back position, but he did enter the transfer portal, and he took some looks at some other schools, Liberty being one of them, interestingly enough, who is on the schedule for JMU this year specifically. And so, there's some question marks. One of their best defensive players didn't stick around, Brendan Harrington, who's now at Georgia Southern. So, yeah, I could have seen App State towards the bottom of this as far as the coaches poll is concerned. Because, again, when guys know each other, they maybe throw each other a bone like, hey, he's my buddy, I'm going to put his team up a little bit higher. I wouldn't say Dow Loggins has that type of relationship with many guys in the Sunbelt just yet. So they could have, not shown any real respect just yet and said, hey, you got to earn it. We're going to put you down here 5, 6, 7, So I was surprised that they've got them up at 3. I'm not surprised to see James Madison at 2. And if you think about just how close Georgia Southern was to the championship game last year, it's no real surprise to see them right there in earning a first-place vote. Interestingly enough, James Madison got 11 compared to Georgia Southern's 1. And yeah, your boys over there at Coastal got 1 too, actually, TJ.
Yeah, surprised to see that. That's probably the biggest shock for me was Coastal Carolina coming off of a 6-7 year and they're number 4. But once again, a lot of exciting transfers for the Chanticleers coming in. They like what they have, as we'll talk about a little bit later with what Tim Beck was saying in the press conference. But yeah, I think that if we want to talk about surprises, also Marshall has 1 as well down there at 6. And I think that whoever that one coach is that picked Marshall to be the first place team in the East, I think they know a little bit of something that we're going to get into later because I've got a bit of a hot take when it comes to Marshall. So we'll talk about that. But I do want to echo head coach of ODU, Ricky Raines' sentiment when it comes to preseason polls. He said today, this is one of the silliest things we do in sports. We haven't played a down of football yet. We're a month out to the season. The only thing that matters is the record at the end of the year. So, these are fun. These are great. But especially at the G5 level, it's kind of ridiculous to do preseason polls and for them to hold up just because there are so many guys that transfer in and out each and every single year.
Yeah.
And then there are also guys who are coming up through the ranks who just haven't had opportunities yet that nobody really knows about, that they come from like the depths of the depth chart from the year prior, and they come up in this in this 2 deep, in this 3 deep, and you just don't know how deep a team truly is until they step on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that sentiment. I've always thought it was, and I do agree with his other point, though. He's like, you guys have a job to do. I respect that that's part of your job, right, is to put these things out so that you create content and interaction. And it is what it does, right? I mean, people are saying, hey, you're wrong, I'm right, all these kinds of things. So you understand it, but you're right. Ricky Rane definitely spelled it out how it should be, right? I mean, that's the common sense thing. I mean, the other thing that they talked about on XM radio just the other morning was, and they were talking specifically about Mizzou, so we'll just use them as the example as well. If Mizzou doesn't start in the top 25 in the SEC, they have to go out and win like every game to get up into the top 25. So you're really doing a disservice when you don't know what you're doing. And like you said, there's so much movement. People don't know what's happening. Arizona State was picked dead last in the Pac-12 last year before winning the whole thing and representing them in the college football playoff. So yeah, I mean, it's a disservice, especially to G5 teams too, that are already fighting for everything they can get just to get as high as they can in polls. None of them are really starting in polls typically, but you look every year, the top 25, we end up with 2, 3, 4 teams from the G5 in the top 25. So we can get there, but the hard part is the disservice starting outside of those pools to try and get up in there. Dominick's jumping on saying, what's up, fellas? We also had Weston Scrambler, who runs App State News on the Twitter verse, who's written an excellent App State article for us. We're working to he wrote it so good that it's long enough that we need to try and break it down. We're working with him in the background to do that. But App State fans, be sure to check that out because that is coming your way shortly.
When we say we're working on preseason content, this is like one of the bullet points is the fact that this is such a good article, but like we were like, let's split these up a little bit. Let's get multiple articles out. But Weston was really good. Weston was all encompassing. So you're going to get Mountaineer fans are going to get a lot of great content from Weston here in a couple of weeks.
You already are on Twitter, but he's going to expand. We've got some interactions in the background to have him kind of provide more of that. Literally boots on the ground there in Boone, which is really helpful since neither of us are. Tyler's jumping on saying the coaches are pulling the okie doke. No way they truly believe these polls. Yeah, like I said, I think there's a lot of politics in the background, not like dirty politics, but just like, hey, I'm going to vote my buddy's team to be a good finisher, right? So it's not necessarily that they absolutely think this and that is going to happen, but some of that could be happening. Travis jumping on saying, hey guys, App State grad checking in from Cary. So he's just down the road from me in Chapel Hill. So App State grads in the Triangle area of North Carolina representing. He was also shocked. App was picked third, and guess they're still riding the coattails of past success. Yeah, that is one thing, right? Like history and tradition tell you App State's probably not going to stay down long. They don't have losing seasons often. So last year was a little bit of a surprise. Well, look at that. Weston's already on the way with a third one as well. So we didn't even ask him for more just yet. We told him, like, this is great stuff. We just got to figure out how to divide it up. And look at that. He's already.
We got to start telling him to stop. Like, stop, relax. We'll get there.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell him that because we need all the content we can get for now. But yeah, we do have to put some work in on the background, which we will get to after all this stuff with Media Days is over. Chuck is jumping on over there with the Southern Miss fan in him, saying the West is stronger than the East. For the first time in a long time, I think that's a real debate. And I'm not saying the West hasn't been great at the top, but I think we just talked about this a little bit, TJ, yesterday. From top to bottom in the West, I don't feel like it's ever been as strong as it is right now.
Yep.
So I think the East has kind of had like those 4 or 5 very strong teams every single year, and sometimes they even had like a 6-team sneak in there. The West has got like 2 or 3 top heavy for the most part in the past. But this year, it's definitely – I mean, we've talked about it. Southern Miss is number 5 in this preseason poll for the coaches. But you and I both think that they could be up there at 1, 2, 3 pretty easily. I mean, it's not going to shock me to see them up at the top. So,
like I said yesterday, there are 5 teams – minimum 4 in the West that could win and be the West representative in the Sunbelt Championship. and I would not bat an eye. There is so much volatility in the West this year and so many good teams that I really don't know. I picked ULM as my dark horse yesterday. I picked ULM as my dark horse. So if that tells you anything about how I feel about the West, yeah, it's going to be competitive.
Yeah, definitely going to be very competitive, very fun to watch. I think we've got probably the most even conference across the board right now. We're like, even the teams down in 5 and 6 could come up here and jump to the top, and it wouldn't really shock anybody. Even really, like you said, with 7. I don't know about Georgia State on that east side. I think they still have a little bit more work to do. But Dell has been recruiting very well. We'll get to him. We won't focus on specific teams just yet as far as like the details go. Michael's jumping on saying, let's go Herd. So we've got a Marshall representative in here. And Willis Sports says, I've got Arkansas State out of the West. We did kind of give them a nod yesterday. So interesting that someone else is on board there with that one. Before we move on to the team specifics, I do want to talk about the first team, second team offense, defense, and special teams. Just a note that we talked about last night. Just want to wrap this up real quick. Once again, the East with 29 total representatives within those first, second offense, defense, and special teams. How about that? Let's fix that. The West has 27. So again, very even when you look at the numbers across the board. And we'll make mention again, Texas State, not a single representative on any of those lists. See you later. Yeah. That's your goodbye, sayonara from the conference.
And another thing, all three of the preseason offensive, defensive, special teams, all from the West.
Yeah. Yep. Very, very interesting there. So we've got some talent in this conference. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. Chuck's inviting us to come tailgate with him this year. App State does play down there at the Rock, and the Battle of the Rock, the battle of the two teams that are black and gold, man, it would be a heck of an atmosphere to get to, especially if they pull off that victory against Mississippi State to start the year, right, TJ?
Yeah. Well, we talked about a couple of upsets. I think Ben James is expecting Arkansas State to dog walk Arkansas. That was the bombshell yesterday. But yeah, if Southern Miss can beat Mississippi State, that's going to be a crazy environment the rest of the year in Hattiesburg.
Yes, it absolutely is. Speaking of crazy environments, the last time I was at this establishment in Conway, South Carolina, it was a crazy atmosphere, very fun atmosphere. It happened to be a baseball team against Clemson, but it was a good time nonetheless. Football was never really boring when I was there as an App State fan. You got right in your face with all the trash talk and heat you wanted, but it was a lot of fun. There you go. Teal Towel. TJ representing tonight for the Coastal Chanticleer.
I just forgot it was there. I forgot it was there.
There you go. Well, we threw on a South Alabama football jersey last night. I've got my App State stuff, so it's only right that you're repping your team over there. So let's get you started off here with Coach Tim Beck and the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers at the podium today.
Yeah, I got to say, Tim Beck coming in for his third year. This is like the year. I think everybody decides collectively that when you're talking about a new hire, it's the third year that really matters. He comes in 2 years ago, inherits Jamie Chadwell's team after Chadwell leaves for Liberty. And he inherits a really good team, gets Grayson McCall to stick around for another year. And they go 9 wins, I believe, 9 wins. And they win the Hawaii Bowl. So that's a great first year for Tim Beck. And then last year, they have their struggles. They finished 6-7. They've lost. They lose in the bowl game, but that is something to talk about when you talk about Coastal Carolina. 5 straight bowl games for a team that prior to the 2020 Cure Bowl had never been to a bowl, and they had only been in FBS for 2 years prior to that. So 5 out of the 7 years that they've been eligible, they've been to a bowl. And that's kind of why I think Tim Beck this year, as much as this pains me to say, the expectations for such a meteoric rise for Coastal Carolina have kind of put him on what sunbeltsyndicate.com calls a lukewarm seat. If you want to check out that article, we rank the job security for all of the Sunbelt head coaches. I love Tim Beck. I think that he gets Coastal Carolina, and he's done some incredible things. Like you have to commend a guy that comes in, takes over for Chadwell, and convinces arguably the greatest sunbelt quarterback, sunbelt career that we've ever seen to stick around. So he has a really good year. He has a mediocre year. Some would call it a poor year. I think the expectations are that if he doesn't do well this year, that it would be that they'd be calling for his job. And that's just what the chatter is in Coastal Twitter. Yeah, I'm hoping for Tim Beck because he does get Coastal, but they do lose quite a bit this offseason. They bring in MJ Morris from Maryland to play quarterback.
And also
They're really high on him.
NC Stater, who Tim Beck brought to NC State. So there's a whole lot of, connections there we need to mention because that's a big deal, right? Like a guy wants to come play for the guy that brought him in to the Wolfpack to start with. Then, he left because Beck left to go somewhere else. And now, look, they're reuniting down there in Coastal. So that's not nothing, right? Like that's a pretty big deal there, right, TJ?
Yeah, it is a huge deal. Another thing that is a huge deal is this year, Coastal Carolina has lived and died by their offensive line, really. In 2020, they had the Mighty Mites. But this year, like years that followed, you had guys who had to step up, underclassmen, all upperclassmen this year. You've got, and one of them came to Media Day, Nick Del Grande, from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, right there. You see him, redshirt junior. He's going to be, Phil Steele's got him projected to be the starting left tackle. And I believe Tim Beck confirmed that today, that he'll be the left tackle. It's an experienced line, and they've got some good returning pieces. Javin Simpkins, sophomore running back, Jamison Tucker at wide receiver, who's also a preseason all-conference honoree. I think they both are, actually. But, yeah, I think that this Coastal Carolina team has the promise, but they do have a lot of questions to answer, especially after last season.
Yeah, and if you saw me in the video, pumping my fist when we mentioned Nick Del Grande, first of all, shout out to his father who kind of interacted with me on Twitter. I was going to try and get him on the show last year. It didn't really work out, but he was excited for it because he says Nick's a talker. So at some point, we will get that to work out. I graduated high school from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, so I'm a Nick Del Grande fan by default, but it's pretty awesome that he was the one of two representatives, I should say, for Coastal Carolina down there in New Orleans. And I got to talk to Shane Bruce in person last year while I was down there, so very impressed with him. Obviously a big-time leader on that team. He made mention, because I got to ask a question via Zoom today. Again, we didn't get down there this year, so we are bringing to you this remotely, unfortunately. But he answered the question about the baseball team, kind of what that meant, right? Because we know how this works. All you have to have is a brand. Any one singular sport could help bring more eyes to your other sports. So my question was very short, but if I could have elongated it, essentially, what does it mean to have success in one sport continue to bring more eyes to you on the football field, interest to your team overall on social media, right? And they said him and Beck both kind of echoed this statement was that, what was really cool is it was a non-football thing that brought the team further together. They gathered, they hung out after practice, after workouts, and watched this baseball team continue to succeed. And Beck's big point was it wasn't one or two guys, right? This was a total team effort from start to finish, and that's how they continue to win and get to that College World Series final. And so that's a really cool thing that these guys got to kind of get together on, build some further chemistry, some familiarity, grow as a family together. And now they've got the indoor practice facility too, which is, brand new. So it's obviously the newest in the sunbelt. So that's a pretty big deal for them down at Coastal because, look, you're at the beach. There's weather that comes in and out real quick. Now they get the comfort of an indoor practice facility to take care of those practices when the weather isn't cooperating.
And
for
it
them
looks beautiful. If you
does.
check out those end zones, you got black end zones now on the teal turf. And I believe they're going to be doing the same thing at Brooks Stadium. So it's beautiful turf, a darker turf. We're going to see how that looks on TV. Cause sometimes with the day games looks a little funky, But a lot of crazy things happening for Coastal Carolina right now. And another thing about the baseball team, him and Kevin Schnall, the head coach for the Coastal baseball team, like they trade back and forth on Twitter. Like, I don't know if that's I don't know what I feel like such an old person right now, but like, what's the shipping thing? You can ship those two, Tim Beck and Kevin Schnall, the way that they go back and forth, hype each other up. They really truly care about Coastal rather than just their team. So it's a great culture down in Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, Beck mentioned that he was in Omaha for that. So he did literally go out there, spend some time and money, or I don't know, maybe Coastal helped him get out there. But regardless, he had interest to get out there and support those guys and what seems like a friend in Kevin Schnall. So pretty cool to see that type of camaraderie, and hopefully it can continue to grow, because that means Beck is successful staying there at Coastal Carolina and continuing the winning way. So we'll see what ends up transpiring down there at the Ball at the Beach, as they call it. Speaking of someone who's returning home, Tony Gibson returns to West Virginia, where he takes the head job at Marshall. One of the coolest names in all of college football, Jalen Slappy, one of their representatives down there, and then Cam Smith, which is like the total opposite spectrum. There's nothing wrong with the name, but it's kind of like it's just not got any flair to it. You got this guy named Jalen Slappy, and then you've got Cam Smith. Like
Cam Smith just taking some shots. Yeah, he's not even here to defend himself.
I know. Well, it's not a shot at him. It's just like I had a roommate who was named Drew Smith. His whole name was Andrew Smith. I'm like, come on, man, you get there it up. My mom and dad's name is Bob and Brenda. It's like the same thing. Like, come on, you can't be any more bland than that. But no, it's just having fun here. I'm sure he doesn't even watch our show, so he'll never know any of this transpired.
Everybody watches our show. What do you mean?
Everybody. We're the best. But anyway, what did you take away from Gibson at the podium? First time head coach, not only just first time in Marshall, but he's a first time head coach in general. So a pretty big move for him this year.
Yeah, Tony Gibson, defensive-minded coach with his experience in the coaching ladder. So I think that the defense is going to be fine. But the big thing I took away from this press conference is something that I've been waiting for. You want to talk about cool names? He has confirmed that if the season ended today, the guy who will win the quarterback job, the quarterback battle happening at Marshall, is Carlos Del Rio Wilson. Del Rio Wilson, a previous, he committed to Florida out of high school, transferred to a place that I know pretty well, Syracuse. And I got to tell you, when I saw that he committed to Marshall out of the transfer portal, I was elated. Like I was thrilled, because I think that Carlos Del Rio Wilson is going to be the steal of the transfer portal in the Sunbelt Conference. I think that highly of him. I think that he has the potential to lead Marshall to an even better year than they had last year, if everything else clicks. Del Rio Wilson, he plays behind Anthony Richardson at Florida in the SEC. He realizes he's not going to get an opportunity there. But he is a 6'2", 215-pound, capable, mobile, huge arm on him. So, like, he's going to get an opportunity somewhere. So he goes to Syracuse, which at the time, you had fifth-year senior Garrett Schrader, who was not going to lose that job. He did a great job for the Orange during his tenure. He's playing in what will be his last year, and the plan is for Del Rio Wilson to, I guess, take the reins, right? And he's going to be Syracuse's quarterback in 2024. Well, Del Rio Wilson goes down with an injury and misses all of 2024, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway because they got a guy in the portal named Kyle McCord. Yeah. So now Del Rio Wilson, he's never really had an opportunity, but the opportunities that he got in 2023, he's got a huge arm. He is a mobile quarterback. He makes good decisions with his legs. His problem is the fact that he's got such a big arm that on those short routes, those short, like, chunk plays to stay ahead of schedule, he takes the receiver's hands off and he throws bullets. He doesn't throw passes. He throws bullets. And if he can figure that out, now that he has the keys to the car, allegedly, if he can figure that out, having taken some stuff from Kyle McCord, having taken some stuff from Schrader, Anthony Richardson, 2 NFL quarterbacks he's played behind now, he's going to do crazy things at Marshall. There's the potential, especially with some of the wide receiver transfers that Marshall has, there's the potential for Carlos Del Rio Wilson to have a 4,500-yard season. I would not be surprised. He's got a huge arm. If he can figure out the short chunk plays and become a game manager, he's got deep ball threat written all over him. And Marshall could do some crazy things in the East this year.
I don't disagree, and it's funny that you mentioned the keys to the car. It's a good thing it's a guy at Marshall and not their first opponent of the season, Georgia, because we don't need those guys in cars.
That's so vile.
much as possible. Hey, they did it to themselves, right? I mean, it's not even like rumor; it's fact. They've been in trouble with cars, so just stay away from the cars. Let the guys at Marshall have the keys to the car. But yeah, it sounds. I mean, to me, from watching a lot of Carolina Panthers as a local team, it sounds like that's kind of that Cam Newton makeup, right? Like, you can make these easier throws, take a little bit off those balls. Like, we don't need bullets in those short yardage situations. Loft it up a little bit. Your guys got 10 yards around him the whole time. Like, just get it to him and let him do the work. So, yeah, I mean, it's so funny, though, to think that in our minds that's such a simple task. But this guy's like, I got to get this thing in there. My spiral's better when I throw faster, right? I mean, I'm thinking – that's what I'm thinking if I'm a quarterback. I got to throw it this way because that's my release, right? And it is hard to maybe make those changes and adjustments. One thing I wanted to make mention of, we talked about some quotes yesterday. Here's one I heard. We've got people that want to be here. You've got a head coach now at Marshall that wants to be here. A little bit of a spicy comment. I mean, I don't think he's personally got anything against Huff, but obviously that is the situation that is being alluded to there. And I'm sure he now knows some of the history with how that whole situation transpired. And we'll never really know the true history to that, I don't think. But yeah, kind of an interesting comment to make at the podium, if you ask me, especially from a first-year head coach, just showing he's not afraid, to make those statements and say, hey, this is me, I'm here, and this is what we think.
Well, they're down in New Orleans for this event. They're known for the gumbo. He's just stirring the pot, baby. That's all he's doing. I love it. I don't know truthfully if that's like what he intended, but
right.
Someone's going to make a story out of that. And I think the first time that those two head coaches go at it, it's not going to be this year, but the first time that those two teams go at it, there's already so much on the line with the fact that Charles Huff moved over, but this just adds fuel to the fire. I think we've got a rivalry budding.
Yeah, I do too. I wish it was happening this year. I think it's got the most juice it's ever going to have this year, right? If they could have played it last year somehow, it would have even had more. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Travis wants Marshall to surprise some folks. That way, the game in Boone on November 22nd, late season game there in Boone, will have some stakes attached. It's just hard to predict anything when almost every team is brand new. Speaking of that, 72 new players, 54 through the portal for Tony Gibson and 18 high schoolers. So a tremendously new roster. This is exactly what Ricky Rane was alluding to when he goes, you guys have no idea what you're predicting here because nobody knows. But you have to make a pick. You have to kind of at least start somewhere. So you have some type of an idea. It's kind of what we all live for in the offseason. But yeah, as far as the coaches and the players go, they don't care about that. They all expect themselves to finish at number one. It's no secret. So we'll have to see what happens there. Michael's saying Marshall versus Southern Miss. It's going to be so heated the next time. It will be in Huntington. So yeah, definitely more heat there than there would be at Southern Miss, right? I mean, it'd be on the sidelines a little bit, but fans of Southern Miss probably don't have as much heat there as
just mark your calendars a year in advance. Whenever that occurs, I don't have the date in front of me, but mark your calendar. That's going to be probably the best in-conference game of the year.
Yeah, it would have been easily far and away this year as well, too. I don't think anything would have touched it. And I said, if it happens this year, I hope they put it on a midweek game so that we don't have any other schools or teams that are really getting in the way.
Just focus on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think there would be people, if you told them, if they didn't understand the situation coming in, and you said, you got some Thursday night game between two low-level NFL teams, and then you've got Marshall versus Southern Miss. If people are thinking about it and knowing the situation, I don't know who's watching a pro game over that, right? Like, this is what makes college football great, is all this stuff that can happen, that can't happen really at the pro level. And so, yeah, that would have been a crazy storyline. Unfortunately, again, we don't get it quite this year, but we did just talk about Ricky Rane and ODU possible hot seat here, right? He's now, and he even alluded to this, he is the longest tenured head coach in the sunbelt Conference, which is kind of crazy to think about that head coach being at ODU to me, right? I mean, it's not a detriment to Ricky Rane, but you think you've got some like historic tradition powerhouse that is going to have the longest tenured head coach. But right now it's ODU because some of those schools haven't got to where they want. App State is an example. And other schools have been so successful that the head coach isn't sticking around, JMU or Louisiana previously or Troy previously. So Ricky Rane, longest tenured head coach in the Sun Belt Conference. What stuck out to you maybe the most at the podium today or in those interviews that they were doing at the Superdome? Either one.
No, I mean, if we're talking about the podium, I already kind of alluded to it. Preseason polls, silliest thing. If we're talking about ODU, like, I think that it's, Rane has a tough year this year. This is going to have to be a good year. 5-7 last season. Old Dominion, since they've come into the Sun Belt, has been the team that has they're so close and they don't quite get over the hump. And that's just the state of the program right now. I would like to see, obviously in the East, it is a difficult division to be successful in, especially in years past. We talked about how competitive the West is this year, but the East is always competitive. It's touted as one of, if not the toughest divisions in college football. But when they had divisions, of course, right. That's not a thing anymore.
Now it's almost a fact. You only have two to choose from. It's either the West or the East in the Sun Belt. That's exactly the easy choice.
Exactly. But since joining the Sun Belt, they've been to one bowl. And that was a game that they lost 38-35 to Western Kentucky.
And they absolutely should have won that game. Absolutely should have won that game.
Absolutely should have won that game. But it's been tough in Norfolk. I think that the bright side to this whole thing, they retained all but one coach. That is a big thing. The coaching staff sticks together at ODU. They return 7 starters on defense. That's the other huge thing. They return a really tough core. And this is a team that, yes, they come up short in the overall, but this is a team that, didn't they beat Virginia Tech a couple of years ago, or did they come close to beating Virginia Tech?
They did. And last year, the first game of the year, they almost upset South Carolina, and we know where South Carolina went and with Lenora Sellers.
Yeah.
And they didn't have Colton Joseph starting that game, right?
And then in 2022, they hand Coastal Carolina their first loss of the season, a team that everybody thought that was just the year, right? That was just the year for Coastal Carolina. They hit a buzzsaw named ODU. ODU came to Conway and demolished them. And, so like Old Dominion has the capability. It's about playing 4 full quarters of football every single time they step out on the field. I think that Old Dominion, they're in a good spot with who they bring back. But this is a big year for Ricky Rane.
I truly believe it is. I like him. I mean, I was growing up on Penn State football, so the fact that I heard that the guy was coming into the conference from Penn State, I was already kind of a little bit of a fan of him. I'm a fan of him at the podium. I like how he holds himself, how he carries himself. I like the choices of players that he brought with him today, bring the big guys, right? The guys that are in the trenches that don't get as much shine during the regular season, because you're talking about the Colton Josephs and the running backs and the wide receivers that are going to stand out, which wide receiver is a little bit of a question mark, right? We don't have a big, consistent player that we know coming in for sure that, is being retained from last year type of thing. It's kind of a whole new crew there, or some unproven guys who didn't get as much time on the field last year. So a little bit of question marks there. I think the running back position is a little bit more solid than the wide receiver room, but you've got a quarterback who can run all over the field, so that may take care of itself. But I agree with you, Wills, here. He's been following us for a while now and appreciate all his interactions across the socials. But he says Ricky needs 8 wins minimum. The 8th can be a bowl win, but he needs 8 wins minimum, and I do agree with that. And I think he can get there. The one thing that was surprising to me was Zach Barlov's comment on the final game of 2024. Somebody in the audience asked a question that talked about like winning that last game against Arkansas State and what that means instead of going into the end of the season with a losing streak, right? They snapped it before they got over there. He says going into that week, we had a lot of people who just didn't want to be on the team anymore and just stepped aside. That was shocking to hear that type of thing being said out loud. And then Ronnie kind of echoed that same kind of statement. Yeah, it was pretty obvious there was something going on that week. But the good news is, they did have some turnover. They probably lost some of those guys who said that and acted that way and played and performed the way that they did. So you keep the core of the coaching staff together. You keep the core of the guys who want to be there and like this coaching staff and want to play as a Monarch. Now you build on that, right? And we saw, I think, what that meant for ULM last year, right? A big early season, very good start. We'll see if ODU can do the same. And I think they could, but it is hard. They got 2 Power 4 opponents right at the beginning of the season, right? Indiana, who was a really, really good team with a coach they are very familiar with.
I was going to say that is the I'm pretty sure that's the Kurt Signetti reintroduction of the sunbelt.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's this first one there. Gonzo saying 8 wins will be tough. I think it will be tough. I think anybody in this conference winning 8 times is tough, though. I don't think that's like, it's going to be tough for just ODU. It's tough for anybody to win 8 games.
In ODU's case, though, I'm less concerned about the first 2 power conference opponents that you're talking about in Virginia Tech and Indiana. I'm more concerned about the buzzsaw in between their bye weeks. That's 6 games. You got back-to-back. Liberty, Coastal, Marshall, James Madison, App State, and ULM, which are all teams that we've talked about and all teams that have the potential to be really, really good. I think that, the teams that come to mind, like Liberty, that's another you're going up against Signetti and Chadwell in the same season for ODU. You've got Coastal Carolina, who could be either really good or really bad. I just said what I said about Marshall. James Madison's picked to finish first. App State's picked to finish third. And then ULM, who's my dark horse, which that means much less than the coach poll. But, I'm just saying that's my dark horse. So that's 6 really tough games all in a row in between bye weeks. That's a buzzsaw before you even get to Troy, Georgia Southern, Georgia State to end out the year.
Yeah. And I would say, in some respects that could be the easier part of the schedule, right? We know how Troy and Georgia State performed last year. Are they going to stay down or are they going to get a lot better? Too early to tell. But Georgia Southern's not going to be easy. That's a team that finished just outside the championship game last year. And like you just said, with the coaches poll, predicted to finish second. So that one ain't going to get any easier. But G. Will says the statement wasn't all that shocking for ODU fans. Barlov has embraced everything about ODU since he arrived from Illinois. The NCAA needs more players like that who call out the weaklings. That was a sentiment. If we want to go with one big overarching one today that I feel like I heard is essentially kind of reward the guys that stayed. We want people who want to be here. There was a number of coaches who kind of made that statement, either direct or indirect, and ODU seems to be the embodiment of that. And again, if that all holds true and they've got the guys who really want to be there, really want to succeed with their friends, their family now, as it may be on the football field, that's going to be a big tool in their back pocket. If things get hard, they get closer and stick together instead of falling apart, which it sounds like happened at the end of last season, right? And if that continues, that's where you talk about the hot seat aspect, because that's not something that he can even control, right? That's a lot of dudes to keep happy at one time in a locker room. And if you're not winning as much as you want to on the football field, those things start to creep in and get into your mentality and affect other things off the field as well. So hopefully, it all starts to come together. I think they have the tools they need, right?
And I think a piece of that mindset that you're talking about is the fact that every single time that you're talking about postseason play at the beginning of the season, you're talking about, before the expanded playoff anyway, one loss could end your season.
Yeah.
2 losses almost definitely ends your season. So when you get to the point where, last year, Old Dominion had 7 losses over the course of the season. They were 4-4 in conference. Like, once you get to a certain point, college football's a grind. It is for 12 weeks with a couple of buys in between. You are just hitting the crap out of who's on the other side of the line of scrimmage. And that's how it is. It's car wreck after car wreck for 14 weeks. And at some point, you start to get a little antsy if you're having a tough season like ODU has had. That's why I said this is a big year for ODU. I agree with you. I think that they have the tools to do it. They have a pretty experienced offensive line. They do have 2 sophomores, one at projected to start at right tackle in Stephen Dubose-Bourne, and then they've got another at right guard in Connor Drake. So pretty inexperienced right side of the line, but that left side, a couple of seniors, and the center, Ryan Joyce, a senior. So we'll see what they can do. I think that they've got the tools. I think that they've got the retention. 4 starters on offense. I mentioned the defense, but 7 starters on defense, 4 starters on offense. They've got the tools. Colton Joseph returns at quarterback, which is huge. So I think that they've got the tools. Now it comes down to execution, and that 6-week buzzsaw right in the middle of the season. That is just going to be a grind for ODU. So we'll see if they can come out of that, at least break even. But if they can pull out of that 4-2, I think that's a win.
Yeah. G. Wills has 2 good comments here. First of all, 6 tough games. I guarantee we see 6 one-score games. Shocker. Yeah, that wouldn't surprise anybody, because that's what the sunbelt has been made out of, right? And then there's a lot of teams that have been in a lot of one-score games, so no big surprise there if it ends up happening. Another name that we need to mention, I'm glad he brought it up to remind us, Jason Henderson said it best last media days: the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but the grass is green where you water it. ODU's linebacking room is stacked. Jason Henderson, in all likelihood, okay, knock on wood, cross your fingers, dot your I's and T's, cross your T's, will become the all-time leading tackler of NCAA football history if he plays anywhere near the level he's capable of after the injury from last year, which is the year he should have set it in. But again, getting injured early on, got the medical red shirt, got to come back this year, and was being looked at for a pretty good NFL draft pick before all that happened as well. So this is no joke of a linebacking core, and Jason Henderson is going to be a beast back there from side to side. A lot like, if you're forgetting anything about this guy, just go watch some highlights, right? And if you get reminded of a guy named Luke Kuechly, don't be surprised, because he gets side to side in that field amazingly well for a guy who probably doesn't even have the best top end speed, especially after the injuries. Unfortunately, we know how it affects speed in the long run, but he makes up for it because he's up here every play, reads the play really well, know how it's developing, knows where he needs to be in the gaps. Phenomenal tackler. Really, really fun to watch.
How about someone a little more regional, Carlton Marshall from Troy?
Yeah, he was the one that's got the record now.
Got the record now.
Yep, Anderson could break it. We'll just keep it in the sunbelt, though, so it's all good. No one can be upset about any of that. One last note before we move on from ODU, 9 of those games. So there's an important aspect to think about. 9 of those games are in Virginia. So very short, easy travel, even though they have a tough schedule to do it in. They don't have to go far from home for most of the season. They're either playing, I think 6 of those are home. So 6 or 7 of those are at home, and then 2 are on the road. I think that's how it breaks down. So interesting aspect, very interesting to see what will transpire with ODU moving forward this year. Getting over to App State, represented on the shirt here for me as the App State fan, and, just the jersey behind me on the wall. It's just a little bit of fandom. But I will try not to be too much of a homer, and maybe I'll even let TJ start out, unless you want me to start out with.
No,
with
go ahead.
Okay. So on the podium today, we had brand new head coach, Dow Loggins, who comes in with some NFL experience and has brought in a staff of NFL experienced players. He's brought back defensive coordinator DJ Smith, who was an all-everything linebacker at App State previously, a previous defensive coordinator under Eli Drinkowitz, who then moved with Drink to Missouri. So he has some SEC defensive prowess, if you will, some recruiting aspects. So I think he's going to do well in that regard. But obviously they didn't get, the whole typical usual offseason here as they were putting the staff together. So how much of that comes together quickly remains to be seen. That's where the question marks are. We talked about it a little bit to start the show with the quarterback situation. He was non-committal on who the starter would be, but as TJ alluded to, I think we're going to be looking at Swan as the guy. Cole's also there, is the transfer from Iowa State, who's kind of that 6'6", 6'7", tall, lanky guy, but has pretty good.
What is it with these tall quarterbacks?
I think, that was the thing for a while. It was hot to have the guy who could see over the 6'6", 6'5", 6'7", offensive lineman. And it's like, they can't make the read if they can't see downfield. Well, I mean, look at all these small quarterbacks who are really successful in the NFL at this point.
These guys are massive.
Yeah, they are massive. But, you got these mobile guys who get outside the pocket and they can see just fine. I don't know where that thought process ever really came from. But, I mean, Jaden Ramsey's a huge dude from Anderson, South Carolina, as you see on the picture here. He's not a small guy. Sean Collins, I've been down on the field level, standing somewhat close to Sean Collins. He is a friggin' monster, man. He's a massive human being. So it'll be interesting to see how well that defense does under the tutelage of DJ Smith. That was no offense to Dow Loggins, because I didn't even know the man's name, to be honest with you, before he was named head coach at App State. But that was mine and TJ Corman's pick to be head coach was DJ Smith. That's how highly we thought of him. So him being on the coaching staff means a lot to a lot of former App State players. So that's another aspect that, indirectly continues with previous regime of Sean Clark having that aspect to him as well. This time it's not the head coach, but it is someone on the coaching staff who hopefully can bring that alumni together and kind of build that excitement and tradition back up, even with the brand new head guy at the helm. But yeah, it's just some question marks there. So, he's built on 3 things is how he says it: smart, tough, and competitive. But I will say this. It was pretty obvious that he's a first-year head coach when he was at the podium today. I don't know how much you caught onto that. Seemed to be a little nervous, fumbling over the words a little bit, even at one point kind of shuffling the papers like, I got to find my spot. But, that's not a big deal. It's to be expected a little bit. He was much more comfortable when he was talking to Matt Stewart in the Superdome in that type of atmosphere, as I would be too, right? I won't blame nobody. Being up there in front of a podium is a little tough, especially when you haven't done it a lot in your career. But I guess that's my quick take. I've got a couple other smaller notes, but I don't know, TJ, what your thoughts are about the Mountaineers headed into this season.
I mean, I think that App State just has a ton of question marks, like we said before. Picked to finish 3rd in the East. That is aggressive, I think, with how many question marks they have. But they do bring in a lot of great transfers. And what I will tell you, AJ Swan, he's a transfer from Vandy. He's the Vandy quarterback. Then you've got two more SEC bounce backs at running back in Rashad Dubonian from Arkansas. And then you've also got Khalifa Keith coming in from Tennessee, who's expected to be like 3rd string, I believe. But I mean, you've got a bunch of SEC bounce backs in skill positions for App State. You've got, like you said, a very talented, a very experienced coaching staff coming into Boone, North Carolina. So I think that and former Arkansas wide receiver Sam Mbake right there, Weston helping me out there. I mean, I could run down the entire list, but point is they've got a ton. They've got a ton of SEC bounce backs. This is a team that could be really competitive. This is a team that could be, maybe a year removed from figuring things out. We just don't know. The only thing I do know is that if you know anything about App State, they're going to be physical, they're going to be mature, and they're going to be disciplined. And that I would think would hold true even with a new head coach. A lot of questions, but the potential to answer them.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with Travis here. It's kind of funny that he commented this because it was going to be something I talked about. You didn't hear a ton about the O-line today. A little bit. They did talk about, obviously, Ramsey being on the O-line. They did talk about the O-line just a little bit. But I don't know. Loggins, to me, seemed real high on his running back and wide receiver room, and he doesn't seem concerned about the quarterbacks. That's not me saying that, but he just seemed to have a little bit more pep when he was speaking about the running backs and wide receivers. So no problem there. But the O-line, and to me, the O-line was the concern last year, right? App State, and I asked this question while they were at the podium, App State has been known over the past many years, pretty much since I've been watching them, that they use the run to set up the pass, right? We establish the run, we establish the run, we establish the run enough that a lot of people in the stands will be frustrated that they ran it on, 3rd and 4 when they could finally thrown a pass, right? I like what Loggins said in that regard, though. He said, we do want to establish the run, and we want to be good at it, but we are also going to play to the advantages of our talent on the roster. And if that means throwing the ball more, then we'll do it. I'm paraphrasing here, but that's kind of what he was saying. He had Lenore Sellers last year at his disposal. Sellers was pretty good at making things work with his feet or his arm. So they went away from the run a little bit and allowed him to kind of freestyle a little bit more because that was playing to his talent. So I think we will see a much more even keel attack unless something's just working really well, right? Like the O-line's surprisingly good and they can run the ball. We're going to see App State run the heck out of the ball. That's not going to be a shock or surprise, especially like you said, SEC talent coming in there and pairing them up with Kanye Roberts, who returns from last season. But, if that's not working very well, I think we're going to see them throw all over the place too. So I don't think they're going to be afraid to make adjustments and change the philosophy during the run of the season either.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that there's out of the projected starters for Phil Steele and through a couple other people that I've read, there's only one returning. There's only one returning guy that on the O-line. Potentially two. It's written a little weird. Griffin Scruggs Jr. I'm sorry, Griffin Scruggs. He returns. So there's two returners. Scruggs didn't get any playing time last year. Ramsey comes back. He's the big guy on that line. But then you do have on the projected starters, those 5. You've got 3 seniors and 2 juniors. You've got a lot of experience on that line. So they have potential, and they're big guys. I mean, you look at this, 6'3", 6'5", 6'3", 6'3", 6'6", 6'3", you'd like to see that a little bit higher, but they're all over 300 pounds. So that they're big boys up there. There is the potential that they are really good, but I agree with that was Travis who said that.
Yes, Travis.
Yeah, I agree with Travis. I think that whether or not it comes together comes down to how quickly they're able to gel, because there are 3 newcomers projected to start on that line.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Another good point here by Gonzo Duke is the East is going to be fascinating this year. I think almost every team has a shot. I think
Gonzo, check out the West.
Yeah, I think the West.
You think this is good? Check out our episode from yesterday.
But you know what's great is, like, I don't think it's wrong on this side. I just think maybe the West is just a little bit more complete from top to bottom as far as like not knowing.
No, for sure. I think this is the first year that you said this about the West. I'm saying this about the entire conference. This is the first year where I have absolutely no idea who's going to be in the Sunbelt Championship. There could literally be 36 different combinations of teams.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, all right, cool.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I have no idea, as an App State fan, no idea what this team's going to be. I mean, it wouldn't shock me for them to just miss a bowl, but wouldn't shock me to see them in a championship game, right? Like that's where I'm at. Like I'm not going to go in like with crazy high expectations. I'm going to hopeful that they do really, really well and be really, really positive about it. But I mean, we don't know. There's just so many intangibles that change year to year now. It's going to be this way for the rest of time, it seems. So that's either good or bad, right? The good news is if your team's down, hey, they could be the best team in the league next year. It used to take years to do that. Now it could take one offseason. So we'll see what happens. But speaking one of the best teams in the league, James Madison, head coach Bob Chesney, joined by Pat McMurtry. I want to say that slow the first time so I don't butcher it. And Trent Hendrick from Richmond, Virginia, so not too far there from Harrisonburg, where the Dukes play home games. Anything that stuck out to you about Bob Chesney and the Dukes today at the podium?
I don't think anything necessarily about what he said at the podium. It was a lot of, this is James Madison. We have a very dedicated fan base, a very culturally rich football program. We know this. We know how talented they are. The big storyline is the quarterback battle. I mean, that's what everyone wanted to know. And Bob Chesney really didn't let anybody know anything, but he did confirm that Alonzo Barnett will absolutely play this year. Those were his words. He will absolutely play this year coming off of that injury. And they do have Matt Sluka coming in. He's, of course, of the fame of he played 3 weeks at UNLV last year, and he was allegedly lied to about his NIL situation, and he stepped away from the team. So he comes in. Sluka is a Holy Cross guy. Played 4 years for Bob Chesney. And then he went off to UNLV when Chesney took the job in Harrisonburg. So what I got to say about this is we know what Sluka is capable of, and we know that he and Chesney have that chemistry already. He's returning to his first college head coach. I don't think it's any real question who the favorite is. Whether or not Sluka can succeed at the FBS level, because Holy Cross is an FCS school, is, I think, yet to be seen. We have 3 weeks of data to pull from, and I don't think that that's fair to pull from an entire season. So for everyone saying that it's pretty much locked in that it's Sluka, I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, because Alonzo Barnett has proven that he is a very capable FBS quarterback. So it wouldn't surprise me for either one of those guys to be under center. And I'd like for people to consider that. Sluka has 3 weeks of experience at the FBS level.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing, because if you looked at it and saw what UNLV fans were saying, there were people that were already kind of not the highest on Sluka, even with their great hot start, right? So saying that the hot start a little bit because of him and his play, but a lot of it was other parts of the team. And so when he left, UNLV kept winning, right? I mean, they eventually did lose the games, but they kept winning right away with the new quarterback that took over. So it is interesting that you say that. And one other tidbit he did say, I feel like, is he said Barnett is on track. Now, he didn't get specific of on track for what? On track to be ready for the start of the season, on track to just start or just play in general. But yeah,
that's what it felt like.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm leaning toward Barnett being ready for the beginning of the season. Also, you have to think about how that affects the locker room, right? Sluka comes in, Barnett says he's ready, coach goes with Sluka. What happens to your guys in the locker room that have trusted you all off season? You've come in here and done something that they weren't ready or prepared for, unless you've coached your guys along the way. Look, Barnett's going to play, but we're going to give him some extra time, and that's being kept within the locker room before the media learns of it and we can tell everybody. But I don't know. You just got to play those things smart. He's still a young coach. Maybe that's something he's not even told his own guys yet, right? Because that stuff can be leaked by anybody anymore. So they probably really haven't truly made a decision, and part of it hinges on Barnett's health as he gets closer to the season.
Well, I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised to see they've got their first game at home against Weber State. I wouldn't be surprised if the goal was to let each of those guys play a half of football in a game that they, on paper should win, heading into their Louisville matchup in week 2. I wouldn't be surprised to see them kind of play quarterback by committee in week 1, unless it's really close and we got to just make sure something happens here. We get a little scared towards the, down the stretch, but I wouldn't be surprised with who they have in week 1 to finalize who that starter is heading into Louisville week 2.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, for those unfamiliar with FCS football, and I have to be honest with everyone that I say this too, I have not kept up as much, obviously, since doing the Sunbelt Syndicate, but Weber State used to be a mainstay at the FCS playoffs. So this is not going to be some slouch FCS team that gets the crap beat out of them all the time that's coming into Harrisonburg, Virginia. They're going to show up ready to win that game. And again, I don't know exactly how they finished last year or the last 2 or 3 years, so I can't really say definitively that they're coming in off of, a 10-win season or something like that. But historically, they've been a good football team. So it wouldn't be shocking if they had some, figuring out to do at the quarterback position if Weber State's hanging close for a half to start the year out. But we'll have to see. Chesney did mention, and I think, TJ, you were the one who took this note down, which unable to finish as many games as they wanted to throughout last season. So they definitely want to focus on finishing those games this year, obviously, because that will help them get even a little bit better. I mean, what did they have? 4 losses last year? Was that?
Yeah, finished 9-4.
9-4. Yeah. But one other note I wanted to make before we move on, and I'll let you have anything left to as well. The return of Jacob Dobbs. I was lucky enough to be down at Media Days last year and talk to Dobbs in person. Immensely impressed with that young man. Just really, really impressed. I even asked him if anybody in his family was military because of the way he stood very attentively. I think he even had his hands behind his back or something like that. And everything was, I wouldn't say rehearsed, but he was ready and prepared for anything you were asking him. Ready with an answer, looked you straight in the eyes when he gave it to you. He is now a part of this coaching staff at JMU. He did get a tryout with some NFL teams, as Chesney was telling us. Unfortunately, some medical stuff, some issues came out and didn't allow that to continue. But this guy loves football. He's got a great personality. I think that the guys over at JMU Sound Off had him on doing some fun stuff last year. So I think the guys in the locker room are really going to appreciate him coming back and helping be a coach. Not shock me at all if Jacob Dobbs is a name we hear very soon in the future as a head coach potential candidate somewhere. Maybe not at the Sunbelt level to start with, but it wouldn't shock me at all. That's kind of the pedigree I got from that guy, a true born leader. So I think that's a big-time get for that coaching staff there at JMU to hold on to. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there with Dobbs and the future with the Dukes.
Yeah, just to answer a couple of things. Weber State 4-8 last year.
Ooh, okay.
7th in the Big Sky.
Yeah,
so that's that. But yeah, I think that James Madison, since they've entered the Sun Belt, they've been really good. That's not breaking news. I think that they're going to be very good again this year. We'll see. They're picked to finish first. I imagine that they're going to be finishing either first or second. That is a great football program over in Harrisonburg. And the other thing that you mentioned, the coaching staff, not to get way too off topic, but we already talked about Coastal Carolina. We didn't talk about the fact that Grayson McCall is back in Conway, this time as a coach. So just briefly, I'll say, and I'll get more into this when we go more in depth and break down these teams in future episodes heading up to the season. But I have a feeling Coastal Carolina is going to lean back towards that modified triple option because they just brought in a guy who's able to teach it because he is arguably one of the greatest option quarterbacks in college to ever do it. So, but I digress. We didn't talk about that. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Beck even joked. Unfortunately, McCall doesn't have any more eligibility. Right when he was at the podium, he made that little joke there. So yeah, definitely a big deal that McCall is back within the conference. Unfortunately, his football career ended with all the concussion history. So not good to see that, but good to see Coastal latch on to him and him latch back on to the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers and get back and be a part of the Sun Belt and Coastal Carolina's future moving forward. Russ is saying the original timeline for recovery for Barnett was 9 months, which would put it into September, but he needs to have some full contact practices for a bit before making a run at starter. He doesn't expect him to play the first 2 or 3 weeks. So that could be interesting if that holds true. But we'll see. I think that's the exciting part. I want to see Barnett back. It's nothing against Luka, but I feel like I got to see Barnett in person last year against UNC where he lit those guys up, and he was fun to watch. So if he gets healthy and back on the field, it's going to be good for James Madison specifically, but it's also going to be good for those of us who like to see good quarterback play because we know we'll get it out of Barnett. All right, that'll wrap it up for JMU. Moving on to Georgia Southern head coach Clay Helton. For the first time in his career, TJ, he is returning with a quarterback that's coming back for year 2. Isn't that crazy to think about? He has never had a quarterback for more than one single year of his coaching tenure with the Georgia Southern Eagles. It's just insane. But J.C. French is that guy, one of the lone quarterback representatives down there at Media Days as well. So is that one of the reasons that they were voted number 2 in the preseason coaches poll to you?
I think it has something to do with that. I think another thing that has to do with it is the fact that they have been building. They have been building this I would say experiment. Georgia Southern, previously to Clay Helton taking over, they are a big time triple option team. Now with Clay Helton, they went to the air raid. Their first bit of that experiment was under Kyle Van Treese, Buffalo transfer who came into the Sun Belt and just threw for an absurd amount of yards. Yeah. Over 4,800, if not over 5,000. I'm not positive, but yeah, they've been building this, and now you finally have a situation where they returns his first quarterback in his entire tenure, his entire 4 years there at Georgia Southern, finally gets a quarterback back. And then the rest of that team, he returned 6 starters on offense and 7 starters on defense. It's huge. So, yeah, I think it's very well deserved that they're picked second to finish in the East, because this is an experiment that has been building for the past 4 years. And I think that this could be Clay Helton's year. I think that the past, 3 years, it's been, he's right there. Will Georgia Southern figure it out? This might be the perfect storm with all that he's got coming back.
Yeah, and there was some crazy games last year. I think the Marshall game down there at Georgia Southern was one of those ones where that's where he alluded to today that they weren't even really just a game away. They were a play away from being the Sun Belt representative from the East. That's how close it was with them in Marshall. And then they even almost had JMU help them at the end of the year, right? Had JMU gotten by Marshall, which was it ended up being a 2 overtime game, I think, between JMU and Marshall to end the season there in that one. That would also put that as one play away. That wasn't even directly them, but that could have gotten them to the championship game had Marshall faltered there towards the end. So that's how close this team was. And I don't know if enough people are remembering that because we have gotten so far away from last season. But this team was pretty good. And like you said, with what they returned, it would not shock me at all for them to be 1 or 2. So we'll have to see. I like what J.C. French did. I think a couple times he took a little too many chances, maybe had some interceptions there, but a fun guy to watch because he's going to try and make some stuff happen. And then they've always got talent across the board in Georgia Southern. They've always got talent. So it wouldn't surprise me at all to see Helton really take off and take advantage of this season coming up. And I think that I don't know if I had anything else really. Like you said, the big storyline is could this be that final, that big first breakout year for Helton.
I mean,
Really.
the other thing I'll say, because I'm touching on as many offensive lines that I can, they've got 3 returning starters on the offensive line. In total, out of the 5 positions, 3 of them are seniors. One of them's a newcomer in Kalen Williams, but no, that's not true. I'm sorry. There's 5 returning starters. There's 5 returning starters on the O-line. So that's huge. This is a very talented Georgia Southern team. They finished 8-5 last year. They return a lot. I like Georgia Southern's chances this year.
Absolutely. I do have to make mention to our friends over at Gatatalk for correcting me. So that's good, because I was misremembering. It was the other way around. Georgia Southern came back and beat Marshall. It was a 20-point deficit in the fourth quarter. I remember there was a crazy comeback and craziness happened. And now that he's saying that, I can vividly remember a lot of Georgia Southern fans had left. And then there was even a lot of talk after that about, hey, why did you guys leave? Because you missed one of the best, most epic comebacks that we've ever had in the stadium history. And there was a ton of people who went and jumped onto the field after that, and well-deserved. I mean, that was one hell of a finish. So, yeah, anybody who left early certainly regrets it in that game.
Big shout-out to Gatatalk. I've seen their work. They do a really nice job covering the Eagles. So, shout-out to them. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been lucky enough to have them help us preview Georgia Southern for, I think, the past 2 seasons now, when we put those bigger shows together with all the podcasts.
Then we might be doing that again. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Gatatalk.
I've already had a couple people ask me if we're putting that together, so I like that, because that means they want to do it, right? Like, usually it's a lot of outreach. Like, you're hoping they have interest, they're interested. I've already had like 1 or 2 other podcasts say, "Hey, are you doing that this year? Because we'd love to be a part of it." And I'm like, hey.
Well, I'll just say, like, and you can put us full screen for a second.
Okay.
I'm going to tease something. There's no promises. There's no nothing. We're hoping, just because I want to build some anticipation for this, we are hoping to have all 14 head coaches and a representative from all of the local media on these shows. So just keep an eye on that. We can't promise anything. It all comes down to team, but if we can get, for Georgia Southern's episode, Gatatalk and Clay Helton on, I think that's a really good episode for Eagles fans.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a fun one to do for sure. I know in the past, we've run it with, like, we've done the whole East and had everybody on, and then we've done the whole West, kind of divided up in the divisions. But those go a little long, so maybe we pre-record and then we put together the episode all at once. I'm not sure how we'll do it, but I like TJ's idea of including some of those other interviews that we are going to try.
We'll make that announcement before we do it.
Yeah, definitely let you know there. All right, so to wrap it up, unfortunately for them, they're also the team that was voted last in the preseason coaches poll, but we've got Del McGee, the Georgia State Panthers, Ted Hurst, big wide receiver, who probably could have left and gone elsewhere after what he had done there last year, but he returns, as well as Henry Bryant being on that defensive line there. But I don't know. There is some maturing to do across the board for this program. I'm not saying the players or the coach. I'm saying the program in general, right? It's still a very young program overall. So Del McGee's done a great job with the recruiting aspect, bringing in a lot of good talent. Now he's just got to put it all together. It's kind of, if I had to kind of say they look like somebody on the west side, it's kind of that Arkansas State look, right? Like, Butch Jones has had a lot of good recruits, and he's had some good players and some good moments, but that season hasn't been put together. And I think that's kind of the early stages of what Del's seeing here as well, is kind of like, hey, I've got some talented players. I've got some talented recruits I've brought in. Why isn't it kind of coming together yet? And I think a little bit's just, that history and tradition just has to be built up a little bit more. So maybe people are thinking he's on the hot seat a little bit. I hope he's not, because I think this is a guy who's got a lot of promise. And I'd like to see what he can get done as he continues to build this program up down there in Atlanta. So, TJ, I don't know what your thoughts are about Georgia State specifically, or anything that stuck out to you today at the podium for them.
I mean, the thing that stuck out to me at the podium just kind of hints to me like something's brewing in Atlanta. You look at the 3-9 record last season, and obviously nobody looks at that and says, "Oh, that's pretty good." But he said 81 players signed out of high school in the last 3 years, 59 of them from the state of Georgia, and the rest of them are from states that share a border with Georgia. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about a recruiting footprint in what I would consider to be a hotbed of talent for high school football other than Texas. That is something's happening. And I'm glad that you brought up Arkansas State, because it does remind me a lot of the early on Butch Jones. Like he's getting the recruiting, he's getting the tools. When can we put it together? And last year, Arkansas State had, they got something going. This year, Georgia State, this is a building block year for them, but I really like where the program's at, especially if they can retain all of those players that they are recruiting. And you look at who they returned. They returned 6 starters on offense. They returned 4 starters on defense, 10 overall. It's about half of their starters. Yeah, I like what I see. I like what I see from, at least from a behind-the-scenes standpoint. Now, like you said, it comes down to putting it out on the turf, and that's the next step for them. So I think that there's something going on. We're just going to have to wait and see if it works out this year or next year.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that, because like you said, no one's going to look at that 3-9 record and be impressed. But if you look at the start of the season, right, last year, Georgia Tech, 35-12, that game was a little bit closer than that score indicates, I thought. And the Georgia Tech had just come off that massive win over Florida State. Now, we know Florida State didn't end up being very good, but still, Georgia Tech was riding a pretty big high coming in to, have Georgia State travel across the road, almost literally, there in Atlanta to go play them. Then they shockingly struggled with Chattanooga, who's not a bad FCS team, but they struggled with an FCS team, right? They won 24-21, but then they rebounded by beating Vanderbilt 36-32, and Vanderbilt went on to, just beat Alabama later in the year. So they do have the tools. They do have some of the talent they need. Can they wrap it into all-in-one and get this done? I mean, it doesn't get much easier this year. They are at Mississippi or Ole Miss. Memphis and Vanderbilt are part of their first 4 games. Murray State is the only one that I'd say you better chalk up as a win, right? The rest of those don't come easy because Mississippi.
Let's give a little respect to our one of our 8 teams in Omaha, please. Yeah. Let's give a little respect to the Racers.
The Racers. Well, if it was baseball, it'd be a little different. But in football, Del McGee and Georgia State and the Panther fans better all expect to beat Murray State, and they better do it pretty soundly. But, yeah, at Vanderbilt, at Ole Miss, they do get Memphis at home. But that is a slate that is going to test them. And, again, that part really doesn't matter for their ultimate goal, which is to compete and win the sunbelt. So if they can get through that, and they're looking pretty good, even if they're not winning all those games, but they're competing in a lot of those, that's going to bode pretty well for their future in the Sunbelt. But they do go up against, just James Madison, App State, and Georgia Southern. They're predicted 1, 2, and 3 in the coaches poll for their first 3 conference games. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a tough task, and I think that's why you're seeing Georgia State pick towards the bottom. Isn't necessarily that they don't think they'll improve. I think the thing is you're looking at that schedule and going, man, this ain't easy, right? So,
well, I'll also bring up the fact that this schedule reminds me of a Sean Elliott schedule where it is so front-loaded and it's almost a guaranteed 0-4. And then you watch Sean Elliott's teams, they were perennial second-half teams. Every single year, they're winning games they're not supposed to in week 8, week 9, week 10. Like that. This is what this schedule looks like. And they already beat Vandy. Like this is there's a lot more on the line for Vandy this time around when they're at home. So I think that's going to be a little bit of a revenge game there. But like they are doing the same things that Sean Elliott did. And what I would say is different is the fact that Sean Elliott, while he did recruit well, he didn't retain well. The only guy that I can think of, a key contributor that stuck around at Georgia State and didn't seek greener pastures for his entire career is Darren Granger.
Yep.
That's just about it. Their all-time leader in receptions and receiving yards. That's old man Sam Pinckney. He goes off to Coastal Carolina. Like, not only did he leave, he left and stayed in division. Like, that's tough. That is a tough pill to swallow for Georgia State, especially when they're in probably the best market in the Sunbelt. So it's all about retention now. It's a top heavy schedule, and then you have the buzzsaw right after the non-con. I don't know. It feels very Sean Elliott to me. Maybe they go on a run late in the year. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, be it very interesting to see what transpires there with the Panthers. But again, I'm hoping he's not really on the hot seat. I'm hoping it's not that type of a situation. But you never know this day and age. It's win or get out, and we know how college football treats their coaches. It's just a carousel of continuing movement, and now we have that on the player side as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess nothing shocking coming out of media days, which it's not typical that anything does really, but we did have some cool quotes, some fun times. We got to know some of the players a little bit better. There's tons of interviews out there that, guys were getting. I think Schultz put some stuff out. I think Sunbelt Podcast did their thing. There's a lot of other ones. I know Kara Ritchie was down there with the radio station that she works with, getting some interviews. Next year we will be down there. There's no doubt about it. A whole lot of stuff. I mean, hell, I was telling TJ before we went live tonight, I came in here last minute. I got done mowing the lawn just before 8:30. So I barely made it in front of the screen.
Didn't even have the courtesy to put on a polo for you guys. Can you believe this guy?
I know. I didn't do the hair, nothing. I mean, geez.
To be fair, I didn't do the hair either, but
yeah. Well, as long as it stays on my face, we're good. So
let me ask you a question. Just based on, I don't want you to choose like an obvious pick here, like somebody that everyone's picking, but out of all of the teams that you heard speak, is there anyone, like any particular head coach that got up on the podium and almost like convinced you that maybe we should keep a closer eye on him?
Two. I have two that instantly come to mind with how they like almost literally attack the podium. Bryant Vincent at ULM and Parker at Troy. I mean, literally, like, Parker, I think he could have just lifted the podium up as he was beginning with how like aggressive he came out with his statement and how he said it. I even went on Twitter and said, Coach, I loved how you came out to the podium. I loved the opening statement. Like, it was awesome. It's like, I want to run through a wall at media days. That's not typical, right? That's not what you get. So
you want to run through a wall about media days while not at media days. That's the kind of reach that had.
Right. Yeah. So I guess I'd lean him over Vincent because Vincent kind of had a little bit of that last year, so it wasn't shocking. I think Parker was more comfortable, and he even talked about that, right? We mentioned it yesterday, a little bit more comfortable in the leadership role that he is in as a head coach. So you could tell he was a little bit more comfortable because you don't come out and say it and attack the podium the way you did if you're not feeling it. And he was feeling it. So, and I think a little bit of that, maybe just a little bit of that, is like he hears some of that background noise from the Troy fans that aren't accepting that first year as head coach, right? Like, this isn't good enough. This isn't what we do here, which I think he's fine with. He wants to be held to that pedigree. He's experienced with some coaching at Notre Dame, right? That's the same type of an atmosphere. You don't lose there, right? You win and you continue to win. So yeah, that's my pick. Is there someone else, or is that the same one you were thinking of?
Well, you took Bryant Vincent from me, but I will say that I really, really did not like how quiet J.G. Kinney was in the best possible way. I think that there is something going around that locker room saying this is our last year. Let's go out on top. It was almost like, like the quiet kid in the corner, that joke. And he's like in the corner of the classroom and everyone's like, all right, let's keep an eye on that kid. He's psychotic. Yeah. That's what I got out of J.G. Kinney. and how quiet he was and how reserved he was, with Texas State basically being at the center of the college football world right now with the realignment. Oh, it gives me psychopath vibes. I think that I think Texas State comes out swinging this year.
Nice. I like it.
And is it an obvious pick? Like, maybe, because they're highly touted, but I really didn't like how quiet he was.
Yeah. You didn't like it in the best way, like you said. Though,
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah. Yeah. It was here's the crazy thing, right? We went over this last night. All the preseason offensive, defensive, special team player in the West. All of the coaches we just mentioned also in the West. So there is more juice, there's more interest, there's more intrigue in the West to me than I've ever heard or felt before doing all this coverage. So it's not bad in the East. Don't get me wrong. It's there. But the West has got a little bit more pep to me this year. And it's to do with those coaches right now until it's the field. Then we'll see if the on-field stuff matches what the coaches brought to media days. But yeah, I'm more pumped to see what transpires in the West and how it transpires than I ever have been before. There's no doubt about that in my mind. So I think we've got a really fun conference. You know, we've got La Tech coming in at least 1 year, maybe 2, just depends on how that works out. But I think they're going to also bring some of this, and we'll see if this head coach still
especially in those 2 Louisiana teams.
Yeah, that's going to bring the juice for sure across multiple sports, not just football. So that will be a really fun time. We had a lot of spaced out interaction from a lot of different teams represented.
I was just going to ask, do we have any last minute questions that or topics that we can talk about really quick? Or
I was going to see.
We do have a lot of people on right now. Right? We've got over 250 people on right now. Welcome in.
I think one thing I'll fill something with real quick before we see if anybody else has a comment is we had a side topic about Top Gun. I mentioned your comment last night, and for those that missed that or haven't watched that West part yet, TJ said that Top Gun Maverick was better than the original, but then also noted it was very important to note that it wouldn't have been better than the original had the original not existed, right? Had it been a standalone movie.
I can feel them typing.
It would. And you know what, though? I was talking to one guy who's a huge movie buff at work, and he actually 100% agreed with exactly how you said it. He did think it was a better movie, and a lot of it is because, you know, Tom Cruise is the guy that does his own stunts, and there's not a whole lot of CGI stuff, and, you know, he was saying it's something I didn't know, which was like the Navy really helped get them like real planes. It wasn't like fake stuff. So it's
that
really,
entire the original movie was like funded by the United States military because that was basically their advertising to get people to sign up and enlist. Like that
it worked.
Yeah, it worked. You know how long I wanted to be a Navy pilot and land and take off from a postcard in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? Like my entire life. Unfortunately, my eyesight sucks and I'm fat, so I wouldn't fit in the cockpit. That's just the way it is.
Oh my gosh.
Way the cookie crumbles. So now I sit on here, I talk football.
I don't know if I could take the G-forces, honestly. I would love to say, like, yeah, it'd be awesome to be a pilot, but I've seen those guys' faces when they hit that stuff, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do it.
I want to do it once.
Teach
me how to fly a plane so I can go fly a Tomcat.
That would be sick. All right, we did get a question in here. Travis has got a good one. Can we add the best of the rest, or does the sunbelt get rated? And I'm sorry, when I clicked this comment, that was not the first one. The first one is what happens with the sunbelt if the ACC, not the American, the ACC blows up in 2030, or maybe before that, or is on their way to that. And then that's when he's then asking, can we add the best of the rest, or does the sunbelt get rated? That's a good question. And I haven't really thought about the ACC specifically, right? It's just movement in general. But I don't know, TJ, what would you think if we see, you know, some of the ACC members end up in the SEC and or the Big Ten? Because I think that's been kind of the rumor, right? Some go here, some go there.
I don't think that there's going to be another major conference blowing up like that. I just don't. If there's any, it's going to be the Big 12. But that's my opinion anyway. But I don't think that there will be. I honestly think that the Power Four that they have, like if there's some serious talks about we want to leave, we want to do this, we want to do this, there's going to be an overarching change in college sports. I don't think it's going to be one conference. That being said, if it comes down to that, I think the sunbelt probably gets rated because the ACC just has the money. That being said, the main thing that I've been saying for the past month and a half or so is Commissioner Keith Gill needs to go to ESPN and start, pushing for some help to get some of these teams over. The buyout for the American is absurd, and the American does not put the same level of product on the field in most of their sports that the Sun Belt does. I would say they probably have them beat in basketball. That's it. That's
not
it.
By a large margin. Not by a large margin, I wouldn't think.
I just in general, like basketball, they have it. Sun Belt, the big quote from Gill yesterday was he wants to focus on increasing basketball, but for the time being, Sun Belt is the stronger conference in all but basketball. So it really comes down to, can you convince ESPN to slide some money so that they can invest more of their money into one place rather than all of these other little conferences? Because the Mountain West is basically deceased, right? They're going to the Pac-12, and they've got to scramble to replace them with not as good of teams.
Yeah.
So like the Pac-12 is now alive and well. They're going to be really good at basketball. But now you've got the American and the Sun Belt and Conference USA. And Conference USA, I don't think holds a candle to the Sun Belt in football or baseball. American, closer in football, but they are not there in baseball. So I think that it needs to be the American that the Sun Belt really focuses on, and how do we make it easier to poach some of them? And part of that comes down to, like Casey from Herd Bros was saying a couple weeks ago, brand recognition and how much you're going to push that brand. So it's going to be interesting to see in the next couple of years what ends up happening.
Yeah. I think my pipe dream of ECU and Memphis is over with what Memphis can be capable of doing, right? They just offered, $200+ million. Essentially, they did the SMU buy-in to the ACC. And it'd be interesting to see if Memphis goes towards the ACC and says, hey, we'll offer you the same thing or whatever. I mean, they've done it with SMU. Is the precedent set that they would do that as well. And like Travis is saying, maybe avoid some of that blow up in 2030. If one or two teams leave, they've already got somebody that they're like, yep, we're good. Memphis is a basketball powerhouse and football is fine, right? In fact, just like SMU, I think Memphis would go into the ACC and compete immediately at that level. I don't think Memphis would go in and compete at the SEC or the Big Ten necessarily. I think they'd be okay, but I don't think they'd be at the top. I think in the ACC, they'd be at the top pretty quickly. But I think my pipe dream of having them in the Sun Belt is over because of the money they're able to play around with. ECU is more realistic than ever, because if Memphis leaves, what's ECU sticking around for, right? Like, their one big draw left was Memphis. I mean, they've got USF, but I don't know if they look at USF as like, the team that's going to help carry them anywhere. I think they did look at Memphis like that, especially with Memphis basketball's prowess and being really good in football for a many number of years now. And with their renovated stadium that's going to come, that thing's going to be phenomenal. Terrible part of Memphis, if you ask me, but hey, whatever. Memphis has got that reputation, sadly, but it is a really weird spot for a stadium. I was driving around Memphis for work, and I'm like, oh, wow, there's the stadium. And it's not near, like, the bustling metropolis of downtown. It's kind of, like, out on its own little thing. So, interesting spot for it to be. But, yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, I kind of agree with you. I don't think the ACC implodes at all. I could see one or two teams leaving, but, again, I mean, honestly, to me, if ACC is looking for anybody, they'll immediately add Liberty, because Liberty can do what the ACC can do, right? Their money can do that stuff.
They'll immediately add Liberty, and they'll probably go after either maybe Tulane. I don't know. That's
Could
if
be
they
Tulane.
want to do even like that. Could be Tulane.
It wouldn't. Well, I guess it would shock me because how many teams from Virginia would suddenly be in the ACC if they went after Liberty and JMU? But, because you got Virginia Tech already, so maybe they don't want to go 4 teams in the state of Virginia. Although, guess how many teams they have in the state of North Carolina? So maybe they don't.
So.
Maybe they don't. Yeah, maybe they don't care about that. I know that was a sticking point with La Tech, but
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about the ACC. They don't really care, or the SEC or anybody. They don't really care how many teams are in each state as long as they draw viewers. True. That's really all they care about.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. I think if you brought in both Liberty and JMU, that probably would happen. I wouldn't want to see that happen, for obvious reasons. I like JMU being paired with us, and I think they fit well culturally in this conference. I don't ever want to see Liberty get added for a number of reasons, but it's more for the fact that we have like-minded institutions that have like-minded or like money that play with at their disposal. Liberty would come in here and dominate every single team with the amount of money that they can spend and what they could do on and off the field with how many people that they have. I mean, their student population would just crush anybody that we currently have, and so would the money. So not something I'd be interested in at all. But Gattalk's making a good point. Liberty doesn't have the academic standards for the ACC, but they could make an exception. And when if Liberty would do a buy-in like Memphis would do, I think the ACC's come on in, right? Like if they were to lose somebody, you're gonna pay to come in. No, we'll take you. And I don't think any other team is actually going to offer that. I think Memphis and Liberty probably be the only two really across the country that are going to be able to do something like that. I think Tulane would have the money to do it. I just don't know if they'd have the interest in actually buying their way in.
I also just think Tulane would compete in football immediately. Maybe not a top half team, but they would be competitive, and they would, with being a power conference school and already having the football success that they've had and being in New Orleans, which is attractive to recruits, they would automatically become competitive within 3 years.
Yeah. And we know that the ACC is not at all scared of small public or private institutions. They've got Duke and Wake Forest. They were two of the smallest schools at the Division I level. But hey, guess what? Money can fix those issues. And Tulane's in that same boat there. I think Tulane has a law program and probably a medical one too. I'm not sure about the medical aspect, but I know they have a law school. So yeah, they're not hurting for the money down there in Tulane. So
got any other comments there?
No, I think that wraps it up. We've gone for
right.
just over what we went last night. So we had 2 pretty decently length shows after we were like, I don't know, we might run.
We said at the beginning of this one, we were like, we'll go shorter this time, but we have more viewers than we had yesterday, and we appreciate it and we love the engagement. So that was awesome. Really excited. That's Sunbelt Media Days right there. Really excited for college football. It's coming in a month.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for everyone for tuning in, listening to the audio version, and specifically the people that went to the website and listened and helped us out a little bit by boosting the numbers there. So thank you very much for checking out the show. We'll probably have another little hiatus as far as shows go for a second because we're going to focus on some of that content on the website. So be looking out for more of the written stuff here in the short term, and we will see you back online with the shows because we're going to have a lot of stuff on that too. So
yeah, we're just going to focus on getting our writers in place, rolling out that preseason content, and then, like we said, we're going to figure out how to do the shows and roll those out. So stay tuned to social media. Check out sunbeltsyndicate.com if you haven't already. And like we said, we're going to announce when we start to have some more stuff up. So, we appreciate your time, engagement. We love that you showed up, and awesome.
Yep. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.